There are 10 Canadian towns where the unemployment numbers look catastrophic. Nobody punches a corporate clock, yet somehow mortgages get paid, families have 2 cars, and people take vacations twice a year. And this isn't welfare dependency or trust fund fantasy. This is actual working class people living better than Americans making 6 figures in Austin. Not illegal, not sketchy, deliberately hidden. In Fernie, British Columbia, locals work 6 months, ski 6 months. Everyone drives $50,000 trucks. In a Newfoundland village, fishermen work 12 weeks annually, then collect government checks. Their houses? Paid off. Another town has $8.70 a day daycare, while Americans pay $2,000 a month for the same thing. Right now, 247,000 burnout Americans are Googling how to move to Canada, with zero clue these specific towns exist. Real estate agents don't advertise them. Retirement planners won't mention them. The gap between knowing and not knowing could cost you literally 5 years you didn't need to work. Like this so it escapes the algorithm jail. Subscribe because your entire retirement math might be catastrophically wrong, and let's break it down. Because what nobody tells you about these places will make you question everything. Number 1. Fernie, British Columbia. Fernie is the kind of town where being a ski bum isn't a phase your parents worry about. It's a legitimate retirement plan. We're talking deep in the Canadian Rockies, about 2 hours from the Alberta border, population just over 5,200. On the surface, it's powder days, craft breweries, and the kind of mountain town aesthetic that makes Instagram influencers weep with envy. It's gorgeous, it's growing, and wildly expensive for what it is. Here's what you're working with. Median home price, around 625,000 Canadian dollars. That's about 465,000 US dollars. For a ski town cottage, rent hovers around $1,800 a month. Cost of living sits at 98% of the national average, so basically on par. Crime's 40% below the national average, so you can leave your Subaru unlocked. And here's the kicker, 68% of residents work seasonal jobs only. Ski season, summer tourism, done. But here's what nobody tells you. The entire economic model requires you to be okay with feast or famine income. You'll make $45,000 in 6 months, then live on that plus employment insurance for the other 6. Housing prices have exploded because rich Albertans discovered it, so you're competing with Calgary oil executives for rentals. And the outdoor culture is so intense that if you don't ski, bike, or hike, you'll have nothing in common with 90% of the population. As one Redditer put it, how do funny locals afford to live there? Work at a ski resort for the season pass, live in a shared house, drink beer at home, and date someone with a Costco membership in Cranbrook. So what's the real trade-off? You get an unreal quality of life, but your financial planning needs to include pray EI doesn't change. And can we talk about parking in ski towns? You need a PhD to decode which spots are 2-hour versus 4-hour versus resident only, and God help you if you park in someone's unofficial spot they've claimed for the winter. I swear, people will leave passive-aggressive notes on your windshield like you just keyed their truck. Picture this. It's Tuesday at 11 a.m. You're on a chairlift with 3 friends. There's not a single other person on the run, and you remember your friend back in Phoenix is in a staff meeting about Q4 synergies. That's funny. That's the whole vibe. And if you think Fernie's work-life math is wild, wait till you hear about the island where phishing checks and government programs accidentally created something even weirder. Number 2. Twillingate, Newfoundland. Twillingate is where seasonal fishing work and Canadian employment insurance accidentally created a system where people work 12 weeks and vacation 40. We're talking about an island off an island, literally on the northeast coast of Newfoundland, population 2,200 and slowly shrinking. It's 5 hours from St. John's, which is the nearest city, and that's if the weather cooperates. This is iceberg-watching territory, fishing village charm, and the kind of tight-knit community where everyone's either related or has a strong opinion about your cousin. Here's the breakdown. Median home price around 185,000 Canadian dollars. That's about 138,000 US dollars. Less than a decent used RV rents around $750 a month. Cost of living is 82% of the national average, so your dollar actually stretches. Crime is nearly non-existent. You could probably leave your door unlocked, and the biggest threat would be a nosy neighbor bringing you homemade bread. And here's the stat that breaks people's brains. The average work year is 14 to 18 weeks for fishing and tourism workers who then collect EI the rest of the year. But here's what nobody tells you. You can't just show up and expect the system to work for you. You need to qualify for employment insurance, which means working enough insurable hours first. You're on an island, so the nearest Starbucks is a literal mythical concept. And the weather is absolutely punishing. 40 miles per hour winds are called Tuesday, and locals joke they need GPS to find their own driveway in the fog. One Reddit up posted, "My uncle worked the crab boats for 8 weeks every spring, cleared $22,000, collected EI the rest of the year, owned his house outright, and spent winters building furniture in his shed. He retired at 58, and his retirement was basically identical to his working life." So what's the real cost? You get financial breathing room most people dream about, but you're also geographically trapped and culturally isolated in ways that'll test your sanity. Okay, can we talk about the weather? The weather here is so bipolar that locals have a saying, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Except that's a lie, because it's always some combination of cold, windy, and damp. It's like nature looked at Seattle and said, "Hold my beer." I'm talking fog so thick you can't see your mailbox from your porch. Wind so strong it'll rip your car door off if you're not careful. And the cold? The kind that make you rethink every life choice that brought you to this exact moment. Picture this. You're sitting in a kitchen that's been in the same family for 90 years, eating fish your neighbor caught yesterday, and you realize the poverty statistics for this area don't capture the fact that nobody here has seen a rent increase in a decade. Your mortgage is $600 a month. Your friend in Toronto pays that for parking. It's simultaneously the best and weirdest financial decision you could make. Number 3. Saguenay, Quebec. Saguenay is what happens when affordable housing, French-Canadian subsidies, and a massive aluminum smelter create a working-class utopia where mill workers retire at 55 and spend their afternoons arguing about hockey. We're talking about a city of 144,000 people in the middle of absolutely nowhere, Quebec, 7 hours north of Montreal, 9 hours from Quebec City. It's surrounded by fjords, feels like you're in Norway's budget cousin, and is culturally so French that English is basically a foreign language. This is union territory, multi-generational family territory, and the kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do. Let's break it down. Median home price around 235,000 Canadian dollars. That's about 175,000 US dollars. For a whole house. Rent's around $850 a month. Cost of living is 78% of the national average, making it one of Canada's cheapest cities. Crime's low with tight-knit neighborhood watch culture. And here's the stat that'll make American parents weep. Quebec's subsidized daycare costs $8.70 a day. Not a month. A day. Meanwhile, Americans are paying $2,000 a month for the same thing. But here's what nobody tells you. You need to speak French, not I took it in high school French, but actual functional French, because this is deep Quebec and English is rare. The union culture is so strong that if you're not plugged into the social networks through family connections or union membership, you're an outsider forever. And it's genuinely remote. Forget spontaneous weekend trips to anywhere interesting. I saw a breakdown on a finance forum where a Saguenay family with 2 kids showed their budget, $235,000 house paid off in 12 years, $8.70/day daycare, provincial tax credits, and their modest life included 2 cars, annual vacations to Cuba, and actual savings. Meanwhile, Toronto families making $150,000 were drowning. So what's the trade-off? You get financial stability most Canadians can't touch, but you're also committing to a very specific cultural bubble in the middle of nowhere. And don't even get me started on the coffee culture. It's Tim Hortons or nothing. If you're one of those people who needs an oat milk cordido with Madagascar vanilla, you're going to have an existential crisis real fast. There's no third-wave coffee scene here. No artisanal pour-overs. Just double-doubles and French-speaking retirees arguing about the Canadians while dunking day-old donuts. Which, honestly, kind of charming in a this-is-what-life-used-to-be way. Picture this. You're in a paid-off 3-bedroom house. Your kids are in $8 per day daycare. You work 30 years at the aluminum smelter, and you're retiring at 56 with a full pension while your high school friend in Vancouver is still renting at 58. The math doesn't just work. It's almost insulting how well it works compared to the rest of North America. Remember Twillingate's Fishing NEI model? Saguenay said that's cute, and built an entire city-sized economy around union jobs and government subsidies that actually function. Like this video so the algorithm knows mysteries are still cooler than celebrity gossip. Subscribe because some of the strangest places on Earth aren't where you'd expect them to be. Number 4. Lloydminster, Alberta/Saskatchewan. Lloydminster is the town that exists in 2 provinces simultaneously, which means residents have figured out how to tax hack their way into a lifestyle that makes accountants weep with envy. This place literally straddles the Alberta-Saskatchewan border. Like, the provincial line runs right through the middle of town. Population about 31,000, but that number bounces up and down depending on oil prices like an economic yo-yo. It's flat prairie land, big sky country, and the kind of place where truck dealerships outnumber bookstores by a ratio that would make you sad. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $315,000 Canadian dollars, about $235,000 US dollars. Rents around $1,150 a month. Cost of living sits at 88% of the national average. Crime's moderate, fluctuating with the boom-bust oil cycles. And here's the absolute wildest part. There's no provincial sales tax on the Alberta side, and residents can legally choose which province to file taxes and based on which benefits them more. You literally pick your tax situation like you're ordering off a menu. But here's what nobody tells you. The entire economy is oil. When prices are high, everyone's driving $90,000 trucks and buying jet skis. When they crash, the town becomes a ghost of itself and for sale signs multiply like rabbits. You'll work insane hours during boom times, 80-hour weeks in oil services, so then nobody works part only applies after you've banked enough or during bus cycles when there's literally no work. And culturally, it's a redneck paradise. If you're not into trucks, Tim Hortons, and hockey, you'll be socially isolated. On our /Alberta, someone explained, my buddy worked 3 years in Lloydminster Oil Services, lived like a monk, banked $180,000, bought a house cash, and now works part-time at Canadian Tire while his investments cover everything else. He's 34. So what's the real cost? You get incredible earning potential and literal tax advantages, but your entire financial life is tied to the global price of crude oil, which is about as stable as a 3-legged table. And can we talk about the drivers? The drivers here fall into 2 categories. Guys in $90,000 trucks who think red lights are suggestions, and people going 15 under the speed limit because they're on their phone. There is no in-between. I swear, you'll see a lifted F-350 with truck nuts blow through a red light while someone in a Civic camps in the passing lane going 40 in a 60. Traffic etiquette in Lloydminster is a suggestion at best, a complete fantasy at worst. Picture this. You're explaining to your friend from Vancouver that you legally live in 2 provinces. You choose which one to pay taxes to like it's a menu option, and your morning commute crosses a provincial border twice for no reason. They think you're making it up. You're not. Welcome to the only place in Canada where your address is a tax strategy. Number 5. Thompson, Manitoba. Thompson is a mining town where union jobs, generous EI, and proximity to Indigenous communities with treaty benefits has created an economic ecosystem that outsiders simply cannot explain with a straight face. We're talking about a city of 13,500 people sitting 8 hours north of Winnipeg, through literal wilderness, moose crossings, and stretches of highway where your cell signal disappears for so long you start questioning reality. This is subarctic territory, nickel mining country, and the kind of place where winter isn't a season, it's a personality trait. Thompson was literally built from scratch in the 1950s because Vale Inco needed someone to dig up all that nickel and figured they'd just plan a whole city around the mine. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $198,000 Canadian dollars, about $147,000 US dollars. Rent hovers around $1,100 a month. Cost of living is technically 102% of the national average, which sound bad until you realize salaries here are also significantly above average. Crime's higher than national average, complicated socio-economic factors, not gonna sugarcoat it. And here's the stat that makes everyone's jaw drop. Vale Inco mine workers average $95,000 a year, but work rotational schedules. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, every single year. But here's what nobody tells you. The isolation is a different beast entirely. 8 hours from Winnipeg through wilderness means spontaneous anything is dead on arrival. The crime and social issues are real and complex. This isn't a sanitized retirement brochure. And nobody warned you about the bugs. Actually, let's talk about the bugs separately because they deserve their own moment of silence. As one Reddit posted, I work 14 days straight, 12-hour shifts, then I'm off for 14 days. I make $95,000, my mortgage is $800 a month, and I spend my off weeks fishing, hunting, or flying to Mexico. My coworker in Toronto makes similar money and commutes 3 hours a day to afford a condo. I genuinely don't understand why everyone doesn't do this. So what's the real trade-off? You get big city money in a tiny remote town with laughably low housing costs and half your year off, but you're also so far from civilization that Amazon orders take 10 days, and going out to eat means rotating through the same 3 restaurants until you've memorized the menus. Okay, can we talk about the mosquitoes? Because the mosquitoes in Thompson are so aggressive that locals joke they should be the provincial bird. I'm talking swarms so thick they look like smoke rising from the ground. You don't go outside in June without a head net unless you're actively auditioning for a blood transfusion. I've heard stories of people walking outside for literally 90 seconds and coming back looking like they lost a fight with bubble wrap. The black flies are worse. Nobody talks about the black flies. That's how bad they are. Picture this. It's your 14th day of work. 12-hour shift, nickel dust, subarctic cold outside. But tomorrow morning you're boarding a flight to Cancun for 2 weeks because your mortgage is $800, your savings account is embarrassingly healthy, and your Toronto friends are on day 200 of their 365-day grind just to afford rent. The math is brutal in the best possible way. Remember Lloydminster's boom and bust oil anxiety. Thompson workers sleep fine because nickel isn't going anywhere. The world needs it for electric car batteries, which means Thompson might actually be getting more relevant, not less. Number 6. Nelson, British Columbia. Nelson is where draft dodgers, hippies, and ski bums from the 1970s accidentally created a town where nobody has a real job but somehow everyone owns a kayak and makes artisanal sourdough. We're talking about a city of 10,600 people nestled in the Selkirk Mountains of southeastern BC, sitting right on the west arm of Kootenay Lake. It's about 6 hours from Vancouver, 4 from Calgary, and approximately 1 million miles from anything resembling corporate culture. On the surface, it's stunning, Victorian architecture, mountain views, a walkable downtown that looks like someone designed it specifically for Instagram. It's the kind of place that makes you want to quit your job in the first 15 minutes and start selling handmade candles at a farmer's market. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $565,000 Canadian dollars, about $420,000 US dollars. Rent hovers around $1,650 a month. Cost of living sits at 95% of the national average, so slightly below. Crime's very low, progressive community, everybody's too relaxed to cause trouble. Population's growing steadily with remote workers flooding in. And here's the stat that tells the whole story. An estimated 40% of the workforce is self-employed artists, seasonal workers, or quote-unquote entrepreneurial, which is polite Canadian for, we have a very active cash economy and creative accounting situation. But here's what nobody tells you. The casual economy means a lot of under-the-table work and bartering, which is charming until you need a mortgage and can't prove income to any bank on planet Earth. Housing has gotten stupid expensive because rich Albertans and remote tech workers discovered it, so the actual hippie artists who built this culture are getting priced out of the very town they created. And the progressive politics are intense. If you're not aligned with the local consensus on literally everything, social life gets complicated real fast. On our /BC Jobs, someone asked, how does anyone afford Nelson? And the top answer was, you either moved here in 1995, you're a remote worker from Toronto, you live in a shared house with 4 roommates, you've mastered the art of 3 part-time gigs plus selling pottery at the farmer's market, or you're slowly going broke with excellent taste in scenery. So what's the real trade-off? You get one of the most beautiful, culturally rich small towns in Canada, but you're essentially choosing between affording it and actually living the lifestyle that makes it worth affording. The irony is thick enough to spread on sourdough. And don't even get me started on the food scene. Every restaurant here has a 15-minute origin story about where their kale came from, and you cannot order a burger without receiving an unsolicited ethics lecture about the cow's emotional journey. I once tried to order a grilled cheese and somehow ended up in a conversation about regenerative agriculture and my personal carbon footprint. I just wanted melted cheese on bread. That's it. That's the whole request. Nelson will not let you eat simply. It will not allow it. Picture this. It's a Wednesday morning. You're skiing fresh powder at Whitewater, back in town by noon, teaching a yoga class at 2, playing banjo at an open mic by 8. Your retirement plan is Vibes and the Canada Pension Plan. Your monthly income is technically below the poverty line, but your quality of life is genuinely better than most people making six figures in Toronto. You're either living the dream or headed for a financial crisis. Possibly both simultaneously. Number 7. Qualicum Beach, Vancouver Island. Qualicum Beach is where Canadian government workers retire at 58 with full pensions and then spend 30 years perfecting their golf swing and complaining about the new stoplight. We're talking about a town of 9,300 people on the eastern coast of Vancouver Island, about 2 hours north of Victoria, and technically on an island that itself requires a ferry to reach from mainland BC. Its ocean views, mild winters, no snow, manicured gardens, and the kind of peaceful small-town aesthetic that makes retirement brochures look like they were shot here specifically. Which, honestly, they probably were. This is the town that retirement fantasies are built on, if your retirement fantasy involves a lot of golf and very few surprises. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $725,000 Canadian dollars, about $540,000 US dollars. Rent hovers around $2,100 a month. Cost of living sits at 108% of the national average, so actually above average. Crime is extremely low. This is functionally a retirement community where the most dangerous thing happening is someone accidentally reversing into a mailbox. And here's the stat that explains everything. The median age in Qualicum Beach is 65.7 years. Not a typo. This is literally a town of people who don't work because they already did their time. But here's what nobody tells you. You need to already be retired with a pension or substantial investments to make this work. So this isn't a lifestyle hack, it's a lifestyle reward. The social scene is 70% golf, 25% gardening clubs, and 5% complaining about teenagers. So if you're under 55, you'll feel like you accidentally wandered into someone else's life chapter. And housing is expensive precisely because everyone wants to be here, which means your comfortable retirement requires having already made serious money somewhere else first. As one poster on r/Victoria BC explained, Qualicum Beach is where Vancouver civil servants retire and suddenly realize their $4,200 a month index pension makes them upper middle class because they're not in Vancouver anymore. It's basically a 20-year victory lap disguised as a town. So what's the real trade-off? You get Canada's closest thing to a perfect retirement climate without actually leaving the country. But the entry ticket is decades of prior financial discipline or a very generous government pension that most people will never see. And can we talk about the drivers? Because the drivers in Qualicum Beach are all retirees who have absolutely nowhere to be, ever, which means everyone does 30 in a 50 zone while you're stuck behind them screaming internally. There's no passing because they're perfectly centered in the lane like they're threading a needle. Your GPS says you're 4 minutes away. You've been behind this Buick for 11. He's not turning. He's not speeding up. He's just existing at exactly 30 kilometers per hour, completely at peace with himself and completely unaware that you exist. Must be nice, honestly. Picture this. It's a Tuesday afternoon in February. Everywhere else in Canada is buried under 2 feet of snow. Here, it's 12 degrees. You're walking your dog along the ocean seawall. Cherry blossoms are somehow already blooming, and your government pension just deposited automatically while you slept. You worked 32 years as a provincial employee, retired at 57, moved to an island where it never snows, and your biggest financial stress is whether to upgrade your golf club membership. This is what winning looks like in Canada. Number 8. Fogo Island, Newfoundland. Fogo Island is where a luxury hotel charging $2,000 a night and traditional fishing economics created a place where locals work part-time and celebrities pay a small fortune to experience what everybody there just calls Tuesday. We're talking about an island off the northeast coast of Newfoundland, which is itself already an island, so we're doing double island math here. Population 2,200, basically unchanged for decades. Everyone's either fishing or related to someone fishing or married to someone who used to fish. Its dramatic coastline, wooden fishing stages, and icebergs floating past like nature's screensaver. Getting here requires a ferry from Farewell, which is genuinely the name of the town you leave from. And no, the irony is not lost on anyone. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around 165,000 Canadian dollars, about 123,000 US dollars. That's less than a parking spot in Vancouver. Rent's around $650 a month. Cost of living sits at 85% of the national average, so your dollar actually breathes here. Crime is virtually non-existent, 2,200 people, everyone's related, you can't really get away with anything. And here's the stat that makes this whole story possible. The Fogo Island employs 140 local residents in an economy that previously ran exclusively on seasonal fishing. One building changed everything. But here's what nobody tells you. You're on an island off an island, which means getting anywhere requires a ferry, cooperative weather, and a level of patience that most people simply don't possess. The economic revival story is genuinely inspiring, but it's built entirely around one luxury hotel started by one philanthropic local who got rich in tech. It's not exactly a replicable model for everywhere else. And the social fabric is so tight that if you weren't born there, you'll be that person who moved here in 2019 for the rest of your natural life. Newfoundlanders are the warmest people on Earth, but belonging takes generations. As one Reddit on r/Newfoundland explained, my cousin worked 8 weeks on the boats, got EI for the rest of the year, but now also picks up shifts at the enduring tourist season. He went from scraping by to actually comfortable without ever leaving the island. The hotel literally saved everything. So what's the real trade-off? You get a life so beautiful that artists and celebrities beg to visit, housing so cheap it feels illegal, and a community so tight it'll hold you together through anything. But you also can't get takeout food. Your internet makes 2004 dial-up look futuristic, and leaving for anything requires coordinating with a ferry schedule that doesn't particularly care about your plans. Okay, can we talk about the Wi-Fi? The internet on Fogo Island is technically described as existing, but calling it high-speed is a genuine war crime. We're talking buffering a YouTube video like it's a loading screen from a bygone era. Trying to zoom? You'll appear as a pixelated ghost having a stroke. Streaming Netflix? Absolutely not. You'll be reading actual books here like some kind of pioneer. Which honestly might be the point. Maybe the $2,000 a night hotel guests are paying specifically to be somewhere the algorithm can't reach them. Must be nice when that's a vacation choice and not just your Tuesday. Picture this. It's early morning, fog rolling in off the North Atlantic, wooden boats bobbing in the harbor. Your neighbor drops off fresh crab at your door because that's just what people do here. You own your house outright. Your monthly expenses are genuinely laughable compared to anywhere else in Canada. You're watching icebergs drift past your kitchen window with a cup of tea, and somewhere across the ocean a hedge fund manager just paid $2,000 to experience exactly what you're experiencing for free. Let that sink in. Number 9. Pembroke, Ontario. Pembroke is where federal government workers, military families, and nuclear plant employees discovered you can have a 6-figure household income, a $300,000 house, and a 12-minute commute, and Toronto's entire housing market is just quietly sobbing in the corner. We're talking about a city of 14,000 people sitting on the Ottawa River in the Upper Ottawa Valley, about 90 minutes west of Ottawa. It's Shield country, Canadian Shield, ancient rock, pine trees, rivers, and lakes in every direction. On the surface, it's modest, unhurried, and the kind of place where people still wave at strangers from their front porches without irony. It's not flashy. It's not trying to be. But underneath that quiet surface is one of the most quietly functional economic situations in the entire country. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around 385,000 Canadian dollars, about 287,000 US dollars. Rent hovers around $1,350 a month. Cost of living sits at 89% of the national average. Crime's low, family-oriented community, the kind of place where kids still ride bikes without adult supervision and nobody panics about it. And here's the stat that makes everything click: proximity to CFB Petawawa, one of Canada's largest military bases, plus Chalk River Laboratories, Canada's primary nuclear research facility, means an unusually high concentration of stable government jobs with full pensions, benefits, and the kind of job security that makes private sector workers genuinely emotional. But here's what nobody tells you. The comfortable life here is almost exclusively available to people already plugged into the government, military, or nuclear ecosystem. If you're not in that world, you're in a regular small-town economy with limited opportunities and salaries to match. It's culturally comfortable in a way that can tip into bland if you need stimulation beyond hockey rinks and Tim Hortons. And you're 90 minutes from Ottawa, which sounds close until you realize you're just far enough to not enjoy city amenities regularly, but close enough that you'll constantly consider driving there and then not bother. On our /Canada Public Servants, someone posted, "I work for the feds in Pembroke. My commute is 8 minutes. My house costs $320,000. My neighbor in Ottawa makes the exact same salary but paid $750,000 for a townhouse and commutes 90 minutes each way. I feel like I'm genuinely cheating at life, and nobody's caught me yet." So what's the real trade-off? You get the salary without the city tax, the stability without the stress, and the space without the isolation. But you're also signing up for a life where the most exciting Friday night option is debating whether to drive to Ottawa or just watch something on Netflix. Which, honestly, after Thompson's Mosquitoes and Fogo Island's dial-up internet, sounds almost aspirational. And let's talk about the shopping situation for a second. Because the retail landscape here is exactly what you'd expect: a Walmart, a Canadian Tire, a Food Basics, and approximately nothing else. If you want anything beyond basic human survival supplies, you're either driving to Ottawa or buying it on Amazon and waiting. I once heard someone describe Pembroke's shopping scene as everything you need and absolutely nothing you want, which is either a Zen statement about consumerism or a quiet cry for help. Probably both. Picture this. It's 4:28 p.m. on a Wednesday. You logged off your federal government laptop at 4:15. You're already home. The kids are doing homework at the kitchen table. Dinner's almost ready, and your mortgage payment is less than what your university friend pays monthly for a Toronto parking spot. You have a pension. You have a backyard. You have a commute measured in minutes rather than hours. You have absolutely nothing to complain about, which somehow feels deeply unfamiliar. Number 10. Fort McMurray, Alberta. Fort McMurray is where oil sands workers make $140,000 driving trucks, work 6 months a year on rotational schedules, and then spend the other 6 months in Thailand or Mexico. It's the most dystopian and financially functional lifestyle arbitrage in all of Canada. We're talking about a city of 68,000 people sitting in the boreal forest of northern Alberta, about 4 hours north of Edmonton. Population bounces wildly depending on oil prices like an economic pogo stick. It's an industrial zone in subarctic climate. Think smokestacks, heavy equipment, massive infrastructure, and the general vibe of a work camp that accidentally became a real town. On the surface, it's rough around the edges. Below the surface, it's aggressively transactional. Everyone's here to make money. Nobody's here because they fell in love with the landscape. Here's what you're working with. Median home price around $485,000 Canadian dollars, about $361,000 US dollars. Rent hovers around $1,850 a month. Cost of living is 112% of the national average because everything ships north through extreme isolation. Crime's moderate to high, influenced heavily by a transient population of young men making serious money and spending it faster than they earned it. And here's the stat that explains the entire economic model. Average household income in Fort McMurray is $191,000, the highest in Canada, with many workers on rotational schedules. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Some companies do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. You're basically choosing between working hard or hardly working for months at a time. But here's what nobody tells you. You're living in an industrial zone in subarctic climate. This isn't charming small-town life. It's a work camp that happens to have a Costco and some restaurants. The boom-bust cycle is absolutely brutal and predictable. People make insane money. Then the industry crashes, layoffs happen in waves, and suddenly there are 500 trucks for sale and people walking away from mortgages like they're leaving a bad relationship. The social fabric is transient to the point of being non-existent. Nobody's from Fort Mac. Everyone's there to bank money and leave, so community is shallow and friendships are temporary at best. On our /Personal Finance Canada, someone broke down the actual Fort Mac strategy. Work 3 years, live in a MUN camp, bank $200,000, buy a rental property in a real city, go back for 2 more years, retire at 35 with $500,000 saved. Half my high school class did this. The other half think we sold our souls. Both groups are probably right. So what's the real trade-off? You get access to income levels that would take most people 20 years to achieve, plus half your year off to literally live somewhere else. But you're also tethered to an industry that doesn't care about your mortgage when prices drop, living in a place where community is a theoretical concept, and working in conditions that'll age you faster than a math should allow. Okay, can we talk about the roads? Because the roads in Fort McMurray are either under active construction, destroyed by industrial haul trucks that weigh more than small buildings, or frozen into a surface texture that'll rattle your fillings loose and probably void your vehicle warranty. You'll spend more on vehicle maintenance in Fort Mac than most people spend on actual car payments. I'm talking suspension damage, alignment issues, tire replacement every 6 months. Your truck is basically a consumable product at this point. You factor in truck destruction budget the way normal people budget for groceries. Picture this. You're making $12,000 a month driving a haul truck through subarctic darkness. You live in a MUN camp where your meals are cooked for you, your laundry is done for you, and your only job is to show up and work 12-hour shifts. You work 14 days straight, then fly to Bali for a week while your mortgage gets paid by money you made before you left. You're simultaneously rich and living like a monk. You're making more money than your parents ever dreamed while experiencing absolutely zero lifestyle inflation because there's literally nothing to buy in Fort McMurray except gas and regret.